What's up? My name is Ryan, and you're watching Gorism, the channel where I fill your void on all things horror, weird, and just plain creepy. You guessed it. Today we're talking about Jurassic World Dominion, the third or the sixth film in the franchise, depending on how you look at it. Me personally, I would say this is the sixth film in the franchise, only because they do somewhat correlate to one another. Either way, I have some positives and some negatives about this film, so let's get into it. The film is directed by Colin Trevorrow, who directed the first of the last three newer Jurassic Park films, and of course stars Chris Pratt, Bryce Dallas Howard, aka Jessica Chastain, and the legacy characters, of course, Jeff Goldblum, Laura Dern, and Sam Neill. There are some new faces also, but I'll get into those in the pros and cons. So essentially the story of Dominion is, I'm trying to think of a way to simplify it easy, but basically it takes place 4 years after what happened in Fallen Kingdom, so it is kind of like what the world is like now, where dinosaurs are kind of roaming free, and can the human race still survive? Whatever. That's like the what you think is the main storyline by what the trailers have said. There also is like 5 or 10, 15 side stories that happen throughout the film. I think that the one that ends up becoming like the main storyline, I don't want to spoil anything, but it has to do with like not dinosaurs, and so these things, anyways, I'm not going to say what it is, but basically that's kind of the main storyline from what we've been given from the trailers. So here are the pros. These are the things that I was most excited for, or things that I really enjoyed about the film. So they're basically doing this whole thing now that a lot of films are doing, like Scream or even Halloween, where they're involving the legacy cast, and banking on nostalgia and it's bringing people into the seats in the theaters because people are curious and they want to see the legacy characters. They want to know what they're doing now or whatever the storyline's going to be. And I don't necessarily think that Sam Neill was like served a purpose, but I thought Laura Dern was really great. And honestly, Jeff Goldblum for me was probably the best part, one of the best parts of the film. He served like comic relief where it made sense, and I thought he was like funny. He didn't really do too much, but I did enjoy his character, and I thought how his delivery was and everything really worked for me. So there's another character that I really enjoyed, and she's played by DeWanda Wise. I really liked her character. I thought she brought a lot to the film. I mean, she's beautiful to look at. She kind of reminds me a little bit of like Eva the Diva, Eva Marcille, if you remember her from America's Next Top Model / like Jada Pinkett. I really liked her, and I thought all the scenes she was in, she did really great, and she brought a lot to the story. And considering there is a huge cast for this film, she kind of is the one that stuck out to me as my favorite, next to Jeff Goldblum. So another positive I have about the film is I really appreciated the use of practical effects. I think a lot of times with newer films, because the first Jurassic Park film I think came out in '93, and I think that back then they were a lot more willing to put the effort into practical effects, and of course visual effects also on top of that and everything else. But I did notice, and I think it's appreciated, that they use a lot of practical effects in this film, though of course they use a ton of visual effects too. But I do really enjoy just seeing practical effects, even if it's just like an up close shot of like them with the dinosaur or whatever. Like, why not use a practical effect instead of making it all visual effects and CGI and everything? You can still achieve a lot with visual and practical effects together, and I think that's kind of like makes it a little bit more magical in a film. Another pro I have is that this film is fun and it is entertaining. Granted, I'll get into some of the extra stuff in my cons, but I will say that I think you can go in with an open mind and have fun with this film. It's basically an action film, and like to the point where I was basically waiting for Tom Cruise or Jason Statham to pop up somewhere in the film, because it was like such a transition than maybe what I thought it was going to be or hoping. But that being said, I still feel like you are able to have a good time, and it is entertaining ultimately. And if you're one of those people that just enjoy watching things blow up or watching crazy stuff happening on screen or chases or anything like that, I think you can have a good time, and so that's worth noting. Okay, so for the cons, I was trying not to make this cons section so big, but it honestly was a little bit hard because I felt like there were way more cons than pros. So I will say that essentially what I was trying to explain what the storyline was earlier, I think it was hard because there is so much story happening. The magic of what made Jurassic Park, the original, so special was that they went into it wanting to make an amazing movie. And I feel like they've obviously been making so many Jurassic Park films because they do make a lot of money, and I understand that. But I feel like sometimes too much story can ruin a film. And for me, I think that that was kind of what made this film suffer. It took me out of the experience, and the whole like Mission Impossible type storyline that was happening, one of the side storylines that was happening, that really took me out of the film because, you know, recently I just rewatched the first two Jurassic Park just because I was like, you know, I kind of want like a refresh. And those, like, you can see the genre has drastically changed. It went from horror, sci-fi type thing to now it's like, I would consider Jurassic World Dominion and even Fallen Kingdom somewhat to being like an action film, more so than anything. There was like a side storyline that ended up becoming the main storyline essentially, and I can't say it without giving it away, so I'm trying to think of a way I can say it, but ultimately it involved bugs or something. And that's all I'm going to say, but it was hard to accept that storyline because, you know, you go into a Jurassic Park film wanting to watch dinosaurs and wanting to see how it is now the dinosaurs are living among us and it's this whole thing, but that ends up not becoming the main storyline, and then you're kind of like forced to focus on this other side storyline that ends up becoming the main thing, and it was just hard to accept because a lot of times things were happening in the film and I was just like, okay, you've gone too far. At the beginning of the film, they start off by kind of like doing this whole like internal monologue about how dinosaurs are roaming free in the world and all this stuff, but like we never really saw any part of the film where it was showing how difficult it was for people to deal with dinosaurs roaming around. Another thing that I just remembered, and this story has been done so many times, like honestly it's played out, but essentially it's the whole story arc of the corporate America, the bad guy that is basically the villain who is trying to do XYZ to whatever stars are in the film. Literally that plot is throughout so many films. Like, it's been done, you know, it's played out. I am ready to see something new, and I was really hoping that Jurassic World didn't go in that direction, but it did, and we were just kind of force-fed, like, again, another plot that was not very exciting. And also, it just like wasn't done well. I think that the actor probably did what he could with the script, but I feel like there were no times in the film where, one, I believed him, or two, that I was scared of him or threatened by him. It just was like all kind of like a miss for me. So I am of the thought process where I feel like no movies really warrant being over 2 hours. You know, there are very few that I feel like can justify that running time, but I will say that with Jurassic World, there were so many times I looked down to see like what time it was and to see how long the movie had been going for. It's about 2.5 hours, and you really, really feel it, you know? I can, off the top of my head, can probably think of like 5 different things they could have cut out of the film that made absolutely zero sense and didn't move the plot along that you could have cut out. So my overall thoughts of Jurassic World Dominion are, if you can let go and have a good time and not have any preconceived notions about what the film should be, I think you can enjoy Jurassic World. I think that there are a lot of times that the movie is fun and there is a lot happening and is very action-packed, and it is a good film to see in the theater, to be honest. I did enjoy that aspect because I love the movie theater experience, but I wouldn't see the movie again. So that being said, ultimately I'm going to give Jurassic World Dominion a 2 out of 5 on the Gorism scale. I know that seems like harsh, but I just wasn't given very much. Even though it was like I was given too much, but the movie ultimately just kind of felt lifeless in a way, and that really sucked because I'm such a huge fan of Jurassic Park and everything that it brought to me in the 90s. Like, I love all aspects of that. So this new one just kind of like, I was having a hard time finding things that I really enjoyed about the film after watching it. So, and my cons list was just like so much bigger. So I was like, you know what, it wasn't for me. But I understand why people would want to see it, and I understand the excitement behind it. And some people might really like it, and they might enjoy all the action that was happening. And so I can appreciate that aspect of the film. But that's just kind of my rating and where I feel like the film lands for me. So thanks again for joining me here at Gorism, the channel where I essentially talk about everything horror and sci-fi related. I can't wait to see what you guys think about Jurassic World Dominion. Did you love it? Did you hate it? So leave some comments down below, and we will talk all things Jurassic Park. Also, I have some really cool videos coming up, so like, subscribe, and we will talk soon.